I love Hollow Knight so much, it physically hurts me sometimes. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I can't stop myself from coming back to it again and again. The art, the music, the world, it's all so beautiful. Sometimes a video game reaches a point of ascension in your heart where even its sound effects can bring you to a state of peace and bliss. That's where I am with Hollow Knight. Just listen to these sound effects. Perfect. This isn't a traditional review. I'm not gonna give a rundown of the plot, tackle each area in order, and rate it 19 taco trucks out of 10, or whatever reviews are like these days. No. This is just gonna be a structureless info dump where I basically just say everything I love about Hollow Knight until I run out of things to say. And then the video will be over. You'll know because the screen will be black. I guess the first thing we should talk about is just how poetic this game is. I mean, the game literally starts with a poem written by Monomon the teacher. It's a beautiful piece of writing that sets the tone for the entire game. Couple that with the subtle chords of Christopher Larkin's piano and you have the opening to something magical. For a game about bugs in a setting that must be smaller than my backyard, Hollow Knight effortlessly sweeps me into a believable world with its music, environmental storytelling, and gorgeous art style. Hallownest has ascended from your standard video game locale to a place I could vividly imagine visiting. Okay, this is hard to explain, but I know what the City of Tears would smell like. Does that make sense? I know how it would feel against my shoes. I can taste the cold, damp air with every breath I take. You walk through this ghost town accompanied by the game's stellar soundtrack, seeing abandoned buildings that tower well beyond the bounds of the screen. The rain is coming from the crystal lake above, another area you visit in the game. It really cements the feeling that you are small, that a few leaking drops of water in a cave can feel like pouring rain against your little body. While the music is always gorgeous in Hollow Knight, this area in particular includes a rarity for the soundtrack: vocals. There's a faint sound of a woman singing in the distance as you walk through the city, and eventually you'll stumble upon the source of that voice, a ghost who sings from her tower. She doesn't even realize she and everyone she's ever known is long dead. I can't really explain it, but the feeling of walking through this city is just heavy. As the water slowly leaks from the cavern above, it's impossible to ignore the feeling that at any moment the suffocating weight of the lake could crash through the ceiling, washing away the final memories of the kingdom's capital. Even though I know none of this is real, I know that these are just unfeeling pixels on a screen. When Marissa asks me to listen to her sing, I can't help but sit there for a few minutes and just enjoy her voice. And when she thanks me for listening, every time I play, I feel like I've improved someone's day. That's just the way Hollow Knight impacts me, I guess. The world is so vast, but it feels painfully empty. In more ways than just pun, this feels hollow. When I say every playthrough hits me just as hard as my first, that's not just for dramatic effect. I remember my first playthrough pretty well. I actually have the entire thing recorded since I streamed it back in 2020. I don't know why, but a game about society succumbing to a plague hit me pretty hard back then. It's really fun to visit this old footage and see my first impressions of Hallownest.
What's with all the goop?
Really insightful stuff. I struggled a lot on my first playthrough. I remember Mantis Lords giving me a ton of trouble. It's hard to imagine now, but this boss beat me senseless for hours back then.
I don't know if I want a challenge. Uh-oh. Oh my god, it's over. Well,
I never actually beat them on my first playthrough either. I was getting close, only one lord remaining, but I read chat at a really bad time and got lanced.
No, no, no! Why did I do that? No!
I still don't understand what happened, but after the screen turned white, you can hear the sound of the Mantis Lord taking damage. I was dead as a doornail, so my only theory is my shade somehow came in clutch and dealt the killing blow right before the map unloaded. I've never seen a shade kill a boss before, but if that's true, it's officially more lethal than a fully upgraded Grimm child. You're a disappointment! I was so caught up in my screen shaking like crazy that I totally missed the 3 different mantises bowing in respect. Or did I simply choose not to see it? Eventually, I made it back to the boss, and they didn't want to fight me anymore. Instead, they just bowed, but I couldn't accidentally kill these ones, so I actually noticed. My chat explained this meant I beat them somehow, and I continued into Deep Nest to lose my remaining innocence.
Ah! What the fuck? What the fuck? No!
I don't know if anyone else experienced this weird glitch, but for some reason, I find it really special that it happened on my first playthrough. What are the chances, you know? It's the kind of thing that sticks with you forever. Sure, I was confused, but I wouldn't change it. Another noteworthy part of my first Hollow Knight playthrough is that it overlapped with the finale of Supernatural. So at the end of my first Hollow Knight VOD, I have about an hour of footage of me just pissing myself laughing at screenshots and plot summaries of that dumpster fire.
Sammy, what have they done to you, Sammy?
So yeah, I have a ton of fond memories of my first Hollow Knight playthrough, but I have to admit, it did take me a while to get into the game. I first tried it on Xbox back in 2018 when my brother bought it for me. He said I'd love it, but I got lost in the crossroads and dropped it within an hour. I tried again in 2019 with my other sibling, but we only played for about 2 hours. It wasn't until I started streaming in 2020 that my brother offered to buy it for me again on PC, and that's when I realized this was kind of important to him, so I gave it one more try. This time I streamed the game, and I think the live chat engagement is the only reason I made it to the finish line. While I found an appreciation for Metroidvanias in recent years, that all really started with Hollow Knight. If I hadn't gotten so obsessed with this game, I wouldn't have fallen in love with Metroid Dread, AM2R, or even Metroid Prime. So I really have Hollow Knight to thank for hundreds of hours of enjoyment, even across games. I trudged my way through the first of 3 endings to the game and felt somewhat satisfied, but my chat wouldn't leave it there. They bullied me through the Radiance ending, and by that point, I knew I was heading to God Home. Hollow Knight is already such a complete package for $15, but the Mad Lads at Team Cherry had to go and add some of the best DLC I've ever played, and it's completely free. The Grimm Troupe is already a lot for free, but God Home is when things get buck wild. It's so hard to imagine Hollow Knight without the Hall of Gods, but it took gamers around the world a whole year to experience the game's true glory after release. To those of you who aren't in the know, Godmaster is the final DLC of Hollow Knight, and it adds the dream area God Home to the game. In addition to some sick lore, animated cutscenes, and a new ending to the game's story, the God Home also introduces a way to refight every single boss in the game, and boy are these good bosses! Most of them. This thing's a god. Hollow Knight has some incredible boss battles, but your first time through, you're burdened with mortality. Every time you died to a boss, you had to limp your little butt through a few hallways, kill your shade, and try again. I'm not gonna lie, I hated every second of it. When a game wants to challenge me, I want the game to challenge me. Don't arbitrarily extend game time by forcing me to walk through 5 minutes of hallways every time I die, and especially don't revive every enemy so it takes even longer. Nothing pisses me off more than arriving at a boss with half health because I took so much damage just trying to get back. This is the reason I've never beaten a Souls game. I'm not calling it bad game design or anything like that. I'm just saying I personally hate this kind of thing, and you're gonna lose me if it's too excessive. Of course, I pushed through the bullshit and got good enough for these roadblocks to stop mattering, but I have to mention how angry this game made me on my first playthrough. God Home completely fixes this by letting you battle each boss in a single hallway. No backtracking, no enemies, just every boss in a straight line starting with a full health bar. If you lose, try again. It lets you get crazy good at these fights, which you'll need to be if you want any chance of reaching the final ending. The Pantheons are awesome. They seem like simple boss rushes on the surface, but they're so much deeper than that. Not only are you greeted with new and intriguing lore every time you make it further, you also get to fight totally new or remixed bosses that can only be found in God Home. Did you think Mantis Lords were hard because they both attacked you at the same time? Well, why not throw all 3 of them at you? I love that. Remember Umu? Well, now you have to lower its shield manually with jellyfish cores. Oh shit, there's a Tiso fight? Tiso! No! On top of the remixed boss fights, there are also 5 totally new battles at the end of each Pantheon. Well, 3 totally new ones. The last 2 are such improvements though that they make the originals difficult to look at. You can't even fight the Hollow Knight or normal Radiance in God Home. Get that trash out of here. These are some of the best bosses in the game. Pure Vessel and Absolute Radiance especially kick ass. It's a good thing you can grind these bosses so easily too, because they're waiting for you at the end of every Pantheon boss rush. Getting to the end of a Pantheon and experiencing a brand new boss every time was so special. It takes so much work just to get there, and then you have to get your ass kicked by a totally new experience. My first time playing Godmaster, I loved getting a glimpse of the Pantheon's final boss, then grinding it out for hours until I could do it hitless. Only then would I tackle the Pantheon for real. That's even true for Pantheon 5, the final challenge in all of Hollow Knight. Pantheon 5 puts you against every boss in the game, every harder version of those bosses, and ends with a showdown against Absolute Radiance, the hardest boss in Hollow Knight. Let me tell you, after spending 45 minutes fighting through the game's roster, I'm always nervous at the top of Pantheon 5. It's such a stressful feeling knowing you're this close to victory, but the hardest boss is what's standing in your way. My first clear of P5 after getting confident against Abzerad was preceded by half a dozen heartbreaking failures. I think I made it all the way to Absolute Radiance 4 times on my victory stream before finally closing it out. Even now, years after the fact, when I've beaten Pantheon 5 literally dozens of times, I'd still be lying if I said my heart didn't pound during the final ascension to victory. It really says something about a game when it can make you this nervous after completely mastering its challenges. I could reach the top of Pantheon 5 1,000 times, and there'd still be a little spark of pride in my heart every time. It's just really satisfying. That's probably because Hollow Knight really makes you work for it. My first playthrough of the game was about 70 hours. That included getting the good ending at 107%, which is everything before Godmaster. The last 5% can only be found in the Pantheons though, and they took me another 100 hours. You might be rolling your eyes right now. After all, you're Game Master Joey, the ultimate video game player. You beat Pantheon 5 on your first try while having sex with a real girl. Too bad the camera wasn't rolling, or else you could prove it. I'm not here to pick a fight with you, Joey. I'm sure you cleared Godmaster in less than 100 hours, but speed wasn't really my goal. I was taking my sweet time. I beat each Pantheon with all bindings, cleared the first one totally hitless, beat every single boss in the game without taking damage, all before beating Pantheon 5 for the first time. I was definitely having fun. Otherwise, I'd have stopped dozens of hours earlier. It's really weird to say because Godhome makes up such a small part of Hollow Knight, but the Godmaster DLC easily made up 90% of my playtime. Look at my main file. You think that wasn't just replaying Pure Vessel for fun? Gosh, Hollow Knight is a really good game. It's such a good game, I had to make a video just talking about how good a game it is. I guess the video's over though. I've talked about my first playthrough, my favorite expansion, and told a few neat stories along the way. Structurally speaking, this is where a video about Hollow Knight should end. But I guess I could talk about the Grimm Troupe for a minute. Spooky! The Grimm Troupe update is phenomenal. Halloween has come to Hallownest, which is phonetically fitting, but also an apt comparison for the overall mood of the world. Hollow Knight's main thing is the dream world, so a god of nightmares like Grimm definitely makes sense. He's so cool too, look at him! What kind of bug is he supposed to be though? With most of the characters it's easy. Dung Defender? He's a dung beetle. Hornet? She's a spider god halfling. Duh. But Grimm? Is he like a vampire bat? Bats aren't bugs, right? I don't know, he's cool though. The plotline for the Grimm Troupe DLC is handled really well because it cleanly fits into a finished playthrough of the game, but can also naturally start anytime throughout a newbie's playthrough. So whether you're playing the game for the first time or returning to your 100% file to see what the Grimm Troupe is all about, it fits perfectly. You stumble across a corpse with a red cloak, and dream nailing it causes a summoning ritual to begin. Grimm's troupe travels the world looking for beings capable of channeling dream energies so he can coax them into gathering all of the kingdom's nightmare essence for him. And let me tell you, Hallownest has some nightmare essence. After the second batch of essence gathering, you're given a choice. When you collect the flame in Deep Nest, one of Grimm's underlings offers you a way to end the troupe's cycle, killing Grimm forever. If you ignore his plea, you return to Grimm with the Nightmare Essence and engage in the coolest boss battle ever! It's tempting every playthrough to take Brum up on his offer and end the quest early, but every single time I find myself collecting the Nightmare Essence anyway, just so I can refight Nightmare King Grimm and experience those chills. I know I can fight him anytime in Godhome, but it's different. Ironically, fighting and slaying Grimm actually perpetuates the cycle, while refusing to complete the quest actually would have finished him off for good. It's a fascinating, self-contained story that somehow slots perfectly into an already jam-packed world full of lore and plot points. I love it. Grimm gets 10 out of 10 for me. Alright, I talked about the hottest character in the game. That's probably a good place to end things. My gay heart can finally rest. But now that you mention it, Hollow Knight is a surprisingly queer game. The uninitiated might be a little confused right now, but I swear it's true. From the ensemble of characters either actively engaged in or grieving gay romances, to the swaths of non-binary and agender characters, Hollow Knight is about as LGBT as it gets. B stands for bug. The knight itself has no pronouns, only really called nicknames by members of the game's cast. The White Lady is your mother, and she refers to you as an it, so I guess your pronouns could be its, which is pretty cool. But semantics aside, the knight has no gender. Hornet is your half-sister, and she's directly referred to as the gendered child by another character. That's pretty clean cut to me. None of the vessels have identities of any kind. Not even genders. I think it's really cool that Team Cherry cared to mention that. Sure, they're bodies, they have sexes, but gender is a state of mind, and the vessels have no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to train. I love how the Nailsmith and Shio can end up together too, and before you call them platonic straight dudes just hanging out, the achievement you get for uniting them is literally called Happy Couple, so even if it's platonic, it's queer platonic. It's just really neat how this kind of stuff is everywhere in the game, and I don't even remember any controversies about it. Maybe because it's subtle? I mean, hell, big channels like Game Theory refer to the knight as he, him, which shows how much research he put into that video. I think Undertale's Frisk is another big example of a non-binary game protagonist completely flying under the mainstream radar. I like it. More please. More stealth trans characters as protagonists of massive indie hits. Yes. exquisite. I've talked so much about how I feel about Hollow Knight, I was starting to wonder how my viewers felt about it. I'm mostly known for Zelda content at the moment, so I was curious if the interest would even be here. I ran a quick little community survey and asked everyone to describe Hollow Knight in one word to see if my viewers liked the game, and god damn, this community post got over 300 comments? Okay, I hear you loud and clear, everyone. My viewers like the bug game. Some of my favorite words were soulful, eulogistic, haunting, cathartic, resplendent, bleeding. The list goes on, really. But none of you got the right answer. The real word that best describes Hollow Knight is replayable. I have played this game more times than I can count. It's addictive to me. The sprawling caves and labyrinths that used to stump me for hours, even with a map and compass, feel like my hometown on repeat playthroughs. The map doesn't even count as a percent, so I don't buy it anymore. I still get the Wayward Compass though. That thing's OP. The game's a Metroidvania, and one essential tenet of Metroidvanias is their endless speedrunning potential. If a game proudly presents your runtime after the credits, it's clear the designers want you to lower that runtime on repeat playthroughs. Over 4 years, I've gotten good enough at this game that the file I did for this video only took 7 hours and 20 minutes for a standard 107 run. The last 5%'s in Godhome, and that took me an extra 2 hours because I died like 3 times on Pantheon 5. I don't want to talk about it. I actually sat down on a stream a few years back and learned the 107% speedrun route, and it was one of the most rewarding runs I've ever learned for a game. Hollow Knight just has so much nuance in its combat, movement, decision-making, and routing. It's crazy! I fucking love it! Whew! I guess that's everything I have to say about Hollow Knight. And like I said at the start, when I ran out of things to say, the video would become entirely about Zote, the greatest hero in the land! Zote is an incredible character. He injects a morality system into Hollow Knight that can cascade into a branching path of consequential decisions. When you first stumble upon him in Green Path, he's getting nibbled on by a Vengefly King. The fly has no interest in you, so you're free to scamper off. If you do this though, Zote dies in real life. Every subsequent Zote encounter for the rest of the game is removed, and the Pantheon of Hallownest even lacks his dream form. This single decision can alter the final gauntlet of the game, and it all comes down whether or not you're willing to let a man die just to avoid a bit of conflict. I think that says a lot about human psychology, and dare I say, society. If you free Zote and kill the Vengefly King, you're met with a scolding barrage of excuses and insults from the noble warrior. He totally had that under control. He would have been fine. How dare you Oh no. You run into Zote a few more times throughout the game, saving his life 2 different times before he finally ends up in the starting village talking to the shy woman named Bretta. Bretta's afraid of the caves below, but romanticizes adventure. Zote's glorious tales lead Bretta to fall madly in love with him. She builds a shrine to him in her house, and the shrine is imbued with so much dream essence, you can literally enter it and fight Bretta's idea of Zote. It's amazing. No notes. In the Hall of Gods, you can access this secret area and challenge Zote's statue to enter the Eternal Ordeal, an endless marathon of these weird Zotelings that will continue to spawn until you're dead. If you kill 57 of them, you unlock a special Zote theme for the menu. Now every time you boot up the game, Zote hums the Hollow Knight theme with his beautiful voice. You could turn this off, but why would you? Wow, what a game. At the start, I said we'd talk about Hollow Knight until I ran out of things to say, and then the video would be over. But we're getting close to 30 minutes now, and I'm starting to worry I might not ever run out of things to say about Hollow Knight. That's fine. I mean, I'd love to sit here and talk until the end of time about every minute detail, but a video has to end before I can put it on YouTube. So maybe we just cut things off here, and if you guys like it, I could talk about Hollow Knight more in a second video. Or another game. I like a lot of games. Some popular, some obscure, and some, well, they're special to me, okay? This is a new format for me, and I'd love to know what you think. If you made it this far, you're a special fella, and I'd love to hear about your favorite game in the comments below. And that's not just engagement bait. I really, truly care. Also, it's engagement bait. I want to buy a boat.